It's a good week not to be Donald Trump, as the former president's legal troubles are kicking into overdrive. On Wednesday, New York Attorney General Letitia James announced the state is suing Trump, his children, and the Trump Organization for 200 alleged incidents of fraud over a decade. In addition to seeking $250 million in fines, James said that she is sending a criminal referral to the IRS and federal prosecutors in Manhattan. Then, just hours later, a federal appeals court gave Trump a huge setback in his fight over classified government documents seized from Mar-a-Lago. That panel freed federal investigators to use those classified papers as part of their probe. Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, had blocked investigators from reviewing those documents until an outside judge could review them. But on Wednesday, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals said that Cannon abused her authority by demanding the documents review. Two of the three appeals court judges, by the way, are Trump appointees. But we're not done yet. Also on Wednesday, writer E. Jean Carroll said that she will sue Trump under a new law that lets sexual assault victims file civil lawsuits no matter when a statute of limitations expired. Carroll said Trump raped her in a Manhattan department store dressing room in the 1990s. Carroll has also filed a defamation suit against Trump, which goes to trial early next year. And then there's this. Remember back in April when it appeared that the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation would wind down after the grand jury wrapped up without any charges? Well, on Wednesday, the DA, Calvin Bragg, took to Twitter with a statement, quote, "Our criminal investigation concerning former President Donald J. Trump, the Trump Organization, and its leadership is active and ongoing." Now, that's a lot. We'll have more on how Trump and his team are responding to all of this in a minute. But first, we want to make sense of all of this that I just went through. Joining me now is former FBI Counterintelligence Division Special Agent Asha Rangappa. She's currently an assistant dean and senior lecturer at Yale University's Jackson School of Global Affairs. So, Asha, just let me read from the 11th Circuit judge's ruling in the Trump documents case. The United States is substantially likely to succeed in showing that the district court abused its discretion in exercising jurisdiction over plaintiff's motion as it concerned the classified documents. Now, how big of a rebuke of Judge Cannon is this ruling?
So, Charles, in the legal world, we call this a bench slap. This is basically the appeals court saying you got this completely wrong. And the opinion by the 11th Circuit is crystal clear. I encourage people to read it. It's really written in a way for a layperson to understand both the history of how it got to this point, but also that, this undisputed body of law that substantiates the Department of Justice's position that classified documents belong to the United States government. They are classified if the executive branch says they're declassified or says they're classified. And in any case, they do not belong to Donald Trump and should not be a part of this. And that protecting national security is a paramount concern that is given great deference. So, this was a big dressing down of Judge Cannon, and frankly, they went beyond what they needed to, and kind of slammed a lot of the other aspects of her legal reasoning as well.
Let's stay on this issue of classification you just brought up. Donald Trump went on Fox Wednesday night and again defended his possession of the classified documents by saying he had already declassified them in his mind.
If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
Trump also went on to call the National Archives a, quote, radical left group. But let's start with this idea of declassification. I think I already know the answer to this, but can you mentally declassify documents? And even if you could, does that even matter in this case?
I've never heard myself of telepathic declassification, but to the extent that the President of the United States would be, an original classification authority that could, just in his mind secretly declassify something, the problem for Trump is that power then passes to Joe Biden as soon as he became president. And so presumably, as soon as Joe Biden believes that these are classified, then they become reclassified. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but it also doesn't work in his favor, even if you accept the premise. And Charles, again, it's a red herring because it doesn't matter. And the 11th Circuit kind of went to this. They said, so what? Whether they're classified, declassified, they don't belong to Trump. And I think I always come back to this is a stolen property case. And whatever their classification status, they weren't his and they did not belong at Mar-a-Lago.
But even if he did declassify them, here's the question that Hannity didn't even ask him, which is, if you've declassified them, why don't you just tell us what they were? Because is it part of the function of declassification to make it available to the public that is no longer a secret?
Exactly. I mean, the point of declassification is to assess the content of the documents as no longer being damaging to national security if they're disclosed, so that presumably you can disclose them. And so the fact that he kept it secret, I mean, that's the part that doesn't make sense. You declassify it, but you don't say anything about it, which, by the way, means that you weren't interested in having these sources and methods involved in this classified information to be protected, which is normally what you would do if you went through the declassification process. So,
I don't know what's there. I'll ask
and at some level, he just wanted to keep it secret. And we have to wonder why. What did he plan to do with it?
So then we have the New York lawsuit against Trump, his children, and the business over charges they defrauded banks on the value of their assets. Trump took to his social media site, to blast the suit, saying Letitia James is a racist attorney general on a quote witch hunt. How serious is this case against Trump?
I think this is a very serious case. And I know that we're a society that loves, law and crime. And, we like to see people rounded up and put in orange jumpsuits. But this civil suit really has the potential to harm Donald Trump in a very fundamental way, because Letitia James can actually order that the Trump organization cease to operate in the state of New York, which would effectively bring an end to his empire. And we know, Charles, that the thing that matters most to Donald Trump in all the world is to be seen as a successful businessman who is very, very, very rich. And what this trial will do is expose the fact that he's not very, very rich, and that it's all been a lie. It's all a house of cards. And by the way, she's asking for a significant financial penalty that would hurt him as well.
And finally, in kind of related news, we learned on Wednesday that conservative actress Jenny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, has agreed to testify to the House January 6th committee about her involvement in the fake electors plan to overturn the 2020 election. How big a deal is it that she's going to testify?
Well, I think she's an important node of communication. I mean, she was in touch with Mark Meadows. She was involved in the Stop the Steal, communications and rallies. What I really think is the bigger problem here, Charles, is that given her involvement, and I think especially what we might learn from her testimony, this really places Justice Clarence Thomas in a position where he should not be, he should recuse himself from any kind of adjudication of issues in this case. And he already has in a situation where some records from the National Archives were being turned over to the January 6th committee. And I think that we're going to see more about the level of conflict once we start hearing her testimony.